afternoon, Danny.
Good afternoon. Is it the afternoon? It is the afternoon.
It is the afternoon. Yeah. So today, what are we talking about?
Well, I mean, this is, I don't know what we're doing today. Is this an intervention on your part? I mean, if it is an intervention, are you intervening on me or am I on you? I mean...
I think I would say more of an initiation. And
Yeah.
I'm going to, bring you into the cult. Yeah.
This feels like a global thing we're doing here. I feel like the world is divided between Canada and everybody else.
On this one topic.
On this one topic.
I disagree. I think
Of course
you
you
need to
do.
look for.
Of course you do. You're part of the cult.
Yeah. Yeah, so today what I wanted to do was introduce Danny to one of my all-time favorite bands. And they actually warmly embrace that moniker themselves. You know, I've heard a
Being your favorite band?
No, the cult status.
Oh, right.
So I've heard Geddy Lee actually say, he considers themselves as the world's largest cult band. And I think when you actually look at the history of it, it makes sense. Now, the band we're talking about, since I haven't said it yet, is Rush.
Yes.
What's the Rush?
I feel like I'm here to represent everybody who's not Canadian. I feel like everybody who's not Canadian, especially in the music circles, are like, those guys are obviously amazing musicians, but we just don't want to listen to them. We just don't get it.
And I think that's a very common criticism.
Yeah.
And that's even one our friend Matt shares as well.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But he's Canadian.
I see. It's not
Heathen.
universal.
Heathen.
It is not
Yeah.
universal. No.
Right.
It's actually I think they're quite a divisive band in
Right.
Canada. And I think
Oh, is that right?
They are.
Interesting.
And I think part of that is because of Geddy Lee's vocals.
Okay.
I always kind of think of it almost as like Brussels sprouts. Either you can tolerate it and you like it, or you can't and you don't.
I was thinking of it more like pencils in your eye.
You know what? They've definitely heard. I've seen so many funny little snippets and stuff of like critiques of the band. And,
Yeah.
Oh man, it's quite colorful. Some of the commentary and metaphors people come up with to describe it. But
I should say, before we go much further, that I actually haven't listened to hardly any Rush. So I'm coming into this completely ignorant, and I'm new, and I'm open-minded, and I'm ready to be converted as long as the cult is good enough.
Join the cult. Join us.
I'm curious. I imagine that there's obviously something to do with it being part of Canadian culture and what you grow up with, and you've been desensitized to the voice somewhat, and
I'm sure
whatever.
that's part of it. Yeah.
Perhaps it's a version of Stockholm Syndrome.
Possibly.
I want to add the disclaimer that I love Canadians, I love Canada. Nothing is said in with any ill intent, but we do need to figure out what the hell is going on with Rush.
Yeah. Well, if I can give you the Coles notes, power trio. One of, I think, the greatest power trios of all time. The sound that they get with just a three-piece band, guitar, bass, and drums, it's pretty incredible. Formed Rush, as we all sort of know it, is Geddy Lee on keyboards, bass, guitar, and lead vocals, Alex Lifeson on guitar and backup vocals, and Neil Peart on drums in the rhythm section.
Yeah.
That wasn't the first iteration of the band. When they first started, it was really Alex and Geddy. That was sort of, their brainchild. They were close childhood friends, both from working class families. Geddy Lee actually came over. His family were Holocaust survivors. Came over with, $10 in their pocket and built themselves up to sort of lower middle class.
I thought Geddy wasn't actually in the very first lineup.
No, he was. Yeah.
Okay, I just quickly looked at Wikipedia, and the main reason why I did, because I know I wasn't allowed to research anything for this, but I just wanted to make sure that I knew who the hell you were talking about. Because the other day you said Geddy Lee, and I was like, who's that? So
he's only the best bass player of all time.
He's coming in hot.
Obviously, I'm poking the bear a little bit, but he is incredible. I think when you hear some of the examples of his playing, while remembering that he was doing that, also playing like basically those, I can't remember what they're actually called, but those like floor sort of bass keyboard things with the triggers, doing that and keyboards and singing all at once, basically moving his mic around with his toucan sand
Is that
nose.
possibly part of why he struggled with his voice, because he's distracted?
I don't think so. I think that's just his voice. I don't think he struggles at all. I think he hits some incredible notes.
By the way, is it Neil? Well, how did you pronounce it? I thought it was Neil Peart.
So did I for the first probably 25 years of my life.
Right.
And realized maybe 5 or 6 years ago that was not the case.
So you're saying Peart?
Peart.
Peart.
Like ear, Like if you say ear with a P and a T. Peart.
Right. Doesn't work for Kiwis because we never say the R.
Oh, so it's just Pete.
It's just pet. We just pet.
Makes it extra tricky. But that's, it's very commonly, he's very commonly referred to as Pert. And that was definitely what I called him for a large majority of my life. But yeah, it is Neil Peart.
Okay, so just to derail you slightly, if there was an alternate universe where we had a band, when we had Rush, and it didn't have Geddy Lee, but it was fronted by, I don't know, someone else?
It wouldn't be Rush.
Sure, not disputing that, but do you think they would have gained as much controversy? Like, is it just Petty who's the center of the controversy?
Probably, to be honest. It is very divisive. His vocals are very divisive, but it's kind of like we've mentioned this before. Like, Ringo's the perfect drummer for the Beatles. I can't really picture anyone other than Geddy. With the vocals, just with the songs, with some of the lyrical content and the thematical stuff that they do, it works really well if you are okay with it and if you actually put in the time to invest it.
Right.
Which is why it's one of those things where it does become so divisive, where you sort of have a little bit of an in-group and an out-group, people that enjoy it and can listen to it and really kind of get into the heaviness of the music and the themes and the lyrics. There's a lot to explore there, but if you don't enjoy that vocal and you can't get to the next stage, well, you're never going to experience that. So
and is the controversy in Canada quite extreme? Like, is it love or hate, or is it kind of a lot of indifference?
Nowadays, it feels like there's a bit of indifference because we've heard so many of the songs. Like, they have a lot of really anthemic songs that get played in commercials and get played in different. I'm trying to think of the right word, but you hear it in the zeitgeist and in the pop culture quite a bit, even though they were never critically acclaimed, always on the outside,
right?
Which is also kind of what I think is so special about them, is they are a band that survived on just hard work, incredible musicianship, insane touring schedule. They were a live band first and foremost throughout their entire career. Never critically welcomed, always shit on, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But the fans that stuck around with them stuck through thick and thin and, supported them for a 50-year career. Cole's notes on the just sort of record sales and stuff like that. Global album sale estimates around 42 to 45 million. 19 studio albums, 11 live albums, 12 compilation albums, 24 gold records, 14 platinum, 3 multi-platinum, 0 number one hits.
Interesting.
Which, that's a lot of sales for not having any major hits.
Yeah.
They did have a couple number one sort of rock hits in Canada. I think they had one number one that was on the Billboard Mainstream Rock 100 in the States, called New World Man. It's actually one of my least favorite Rush songs. But that was sort of the one that was actually critically acclaimed and actually did chart a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, another one, third most consecutive gold or platinum studio albums by a rock band, behind only the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
Say that again? Third?
Consecutive gold and platinum albums.
Oh, okay, right.
So the third most consecutive gold and platinum albums of any band ever, outside of the Beatles and Rolling Stones.
But are these Canadian gold?
No. That's by the RIAA, which is the Recording Industry and Association of America.
Because we have, I think each country has their own version of that. Like in New Zealand, you only have to sell about 20 records to get a gold record.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that. So yeah, they, pretty massive numbers and a very impressive career. Their discography is very in depth. And one of the things that I love about Rush so much is that there's very distinct sort of eras. They were a band that was constantly pushing themselves. Pretty much every album they've ever done was, and then they often say this in interviews and stuff, they were always overextending. No matter what they were doing, it was just in a different area. Maybe it was more on the heavy playing, maybe it was more on the thematical themes, the long epics. Then it kind of got into sort of more of a pop, sort of synth and a bit of reggae, a bit of new wave stuff.
So you mean they never half-assed anything? Never. Whatever they were doing, they went way into
100%.
Right, okay.
And they often overcorrected and went a bit too far, and people hated it, and they go, okay, we'll try something new. But there's a pretty famous interview with Neil where he says, the words that doesn't fit Rush have never been uttered because they will do whatever and just see and do their own take on it and see how it goes. Very, very fearless band, very true and very honest to who they were and what they were doing, and never really compromised. And that's kind of what I want to get through and go through some examples and show you. So
yeah.
Started off, I said, like a lower middle class, started playing pretty seriously in their early teen years. Geddy and Alex first bonded over their goofiness, not over their love of music. They're both pretty outcast in their school and social norms.
What age were they, did you say, when they met?
I think in like sort of grade 8 or grade 9, sort of that middle school range.
Yep.
Started playing quite a bit and started playing live as many nights a week as they can. And this was around 1968. They formed a band with John Rutsey, who was one of their neighbors. He was on drums, so it was Geddy on bass, Alex on guitar, and John on drums. John was a much more straight up and down rock drummer.
Yeah.
And you'll actually see that in the first example. They started playing a lot of church gigs and stuff like that, a lot of high school dances. At the time in Ontario, the drinking age was 21. So a lot of high schools, kind of took it on themselves to have lots of live events, live music, stuff like that, keep the kids entertained so they don't just go off and get drunk and cause all sorts of issues.
Do you mean because it was 21, the kids would not go to bars, they'd go and get messed up in other places?
Exactly.
So schools are trying to keep them somewhere.
Yeah, keep them somewhere where you can actually, give them entertainment and not just have them cause
they're not under a bridge somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they often joke that, for those school dances and stuff, it's all pop music. It's the music of today, and that's very much not what Rush played. So they often joke that they've ruined many people's, Sadie Hawkins dances or many people's high school dance memories. But, that's just kind of who they were. They were loud. They were playing the rock of the day. They were highly influenced by sort of the Brit blues rock revival, massive Led Zeppelin fans. Before they just before we jump into the first example, Ray Daniels saw them playing at a church hall, and that was in around 1968, 1969. I think they were only 16 at the time. He could tell they were already great players. He was a fan immediately. He asked to be their manager, and Alex said, hey, if you can get us from $10 a gig to $12 a gig, sure. That's kind of the realm they were at. Playing live basically all over Southern Ontario, anywhere they could. And they were starting to have a little bit of a cult following just for their live performances. They tried to cut a record, could not sell it, could not get a recording deal anywhere. Eventually they said, you know what, screw it, we'll self-fund. So Ray Daniels funded the first record and started shipping it out. Couldn't get any airplay in Canada. Eventually we started sending samples down to the States, and there was a radio station in Cleveland that picked up on Working Man, which will be the first example.
Right.
The area where the radio station was big it was a working class town. And you can see a lot of those early Led Zeppelin influences. To me, this sort of feels like Rush doing a Led Zeppelin imitation and not doing super great at either, but it's cool.
You said they were playing in church halls. Were they a Christian band?
No.
Okay.
They would just play wherever they could.
Yeah.
No, Geddy is Jewish.
Right.
Alex is a Yugoslavian immigrant. His parents also were fleeing the war at the time, so they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
They had a bit of a turning point around 1971 where the drinking age was reduced from 21 to 18, and that was right when they were turning 18 as well. So all of a sudden they were sort of at that it age. They could go and play all these different bars, and they really started developing their chops. Yeah. So they cut this record and released it in 1974.
Oh wow, this is quite a long time after they started.
Yeah, so they've been playing live for many years at this stage, and pretty prodigiously, 3 to 5 shows a week sort of thing.
Right.
Basically anywhere they could. Very much a live band, a live working man's band.
It's interesting how they've double-tracked its vocals and sent them left and right. With this whole controversy around his vocals, do you know what his opinion is? Like, does he think he's awesome, or is he super self-conscious? Or?
I think they're such goofy characters.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. So Neil and Geddy are extreme goofballs. They're really personable. They don't take themselves very seriously at all. Whereas Neil is very, very introverted. He struggles with the fame. He struggles with interviews, all that sort of stuff. He's much more comfortable reading a book about some high-level philosophy or something like that, as opposed to sitting and actually having those conversations.
Yeah.
I've seen Geddy kind of joke about it all the time, so I don't think he takes himself too seriously at all. I think he is well aware of the controversy around it, and decided, you know what, the fans like it, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and that's right.
So yeah, this was Working Man. It's not a bad song.
No.
I actually think the solos are a bit gratuitous.
Really?
You know, it's a little bit.
I thought it was all right.
I mean, it goes on for like 2 or 3 more minutes.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean, though. They sound. I mean, it was not bad.
No, it's not bad.
But it does sound like a kind of a covers band of Led Zeppelin.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that was actually originally that was sort of a bit of the draw for people.
Yeah.
The radio DJ who first started playing it in Cleveland, I can't remember her name at the moment, but she mentioned about how the phone lines were lighting up, and it's like, hey, when's the new Led Zeppelin coming out? And she's like, no, Canadian band, Rush. And that was actually the start of them getting a bit of a cult following, though.
Right, yeah.
So that was enough that it wasn't a huge hit, but it did get them to start touring.
Yeah.
And they were touring in the States now. And John Rutsey, the drummer at the time, unfortunately had type 1 diabetes. He was not taking care of his health. They're young 20-year-olds. They're partying, they're drinking. He's doing all sorts of damage to himself. And eventually the tour manager said, look, you're performing. You're not being let go for a skill or you're not doing your job. But if we take you out on this tour, you're going to come home in a body bag.
Right.
So John understood that they kind of parted ways, but they needed to find a new drummer. The tour was kicking off, I think, in 2 to 4 weeks, and they had nobody. Through the grapevine, they heard about Neil.
Yep.
Neil was sort of one of those friend of a friend, like, hey, you got to check this guy out. He was in a serious band at the time called J.R. Flood. They were, practicing every day of the week, out playing live, 2 to 4 times a week sort of thing. Lots of sort of jazz influence. Bit of a goofy looking dude. Definitely does not look the part.
Yeah.
So he was working at his parents' farm supply, like tractor supply store, and a white Corvette pulls up. This was from the record label that was promoting this next tour and trying to get these guys on the road. They've got this record deal now on the back end of a little bit of the hype from Working Man. And takes him. He does an audition for them. Apparently, Alex's first thought was, I don't think he's cool enough to be in the band. Like, he's just a bit of a nerdy guy. He's real gangly. He's got short hair when everyone else has got long hair, just kind of doing his own sort of thing.
I thought you said the other 2 guys are pretty nerdy.
Oh, they all are.
Right.
It's very much a nerds band.
So he was even nerdier than them.
He was too nerdy for the nerds.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's how you know it's next level. And like most musicians do, he has his audition, thinks, oh, shit, I blew it.
Right.
Didn't think it went well. Alex and Geddy famously said, like, he came in and just blew them away, pounded the crap out of the drums. He said it was like having Keith Moon and John Bonham in one. Geddy said, I was just blown away. So they say, you got the job, and Neil said it was like a tornado came in and just blew his life apart because he had to learn all these new songs in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then they were immediately going on the road, and they were opening for Uriah Heep and Manfred Mann in front of 11,000 people in Cleveland.
Yep.
So it was absolute chaos. He learned the songs, went out, and they just absolutely nailed it. Mick Box of Uriah Heep famously said his first thought was, wow, he can sing high. And then the second thought was, it was pretty obvious they were going to make it big pretty quick.
Right. Interesting.
So they start going off on this tour. They're playing, I think, like 200 plus shows a year. It's that sort of classic U.S. tour where they're playing as many shows in as many different cities as they can, trying to promote the band. They're recording, they're writing new songs for their next album. And Neil, being the new guy, he's kind of a bit introverted, doing his own thing. He realized that he could go to bookstores all over the country and kind of self-educate everywhere.
Right.
And Geddy and Alex see this and go, oh, shit, look at how many books he's reading. I wonder if this guy can write lyrics. And that's sort of the moment where I think Rush becomes Rush, because Neil transitions into more of a songwriter role, and he becomes the main lyricist.
Wow. And Geddy didn't want to?
No, well, no, not at all.
Wow.
I mean, I don't, maybe there was a bit of back and forth. I don't know, but
but he's a singer. The singers normally write the lyrics, right?
Yeah. It's very rare for a drummer to be the lyricist.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who is always in his head, as you'll see in the lyrics, thinks very, very deeply about all sorts of crazy topics, and started putting that into the lyrics. And for Geddy, he's often said, his first thought was, oh, wow, how am I going to actually sing this? This is a mouthful. This is a lot. But that is where Rush starts to gain its identity.
Yep.
So they follow up from the self-titled album with the second one called Fly By Night, and we'll play the title track.
It's good because we're 20 minutes in and we've heard one song. So
don't worry, the other ones will go quicker.
This will be a 4-hour episode. So. And what year is this?
This is 1975.
Okay.
Now this one is one of their hits that has sort of remained a hit. This is one that still gets a lot of airtime. Still be played on a lot of classic rock radio stations. It'll be in commercials and stuff like that. You can hear a bit of a change in the drumming already.
Yeah. I can hear the Keith Moon vibe. It's all a bit loosey-goosey, in a good way. Polyrhythmic fills back there.
So yeah, they're starting to develop into the band that they're going to be.
Right.
This song was pretty accessible. This one was sort of the radio hit. This sort of carried them on their next tour. But one thing that they were finding was the record company wasn't too comfortable with the other songs on the album. They started to get pretty weird, pretty thematical. There's a song about like elves in Rivendell. There's a song called Bytor and the Snow Dog. Some really out there stuff, and they weren't really sure, are they developing in the right way? It was they weren't sure if that was the band that they thought they were signing on to, So. But they were still building that cult following. They were touring like crazy, building that momentum. And they came out with their next album called Caress of Steel.
Okay.
Caress of Steel only had 5 songs. I think the average length on them was, 10 to 12 minutes.
Yeah.
They're super weird.
That really means it's an EP.
Pretty much. So if you want to play the next one, this song is called Bastille Day. This was the song that opened the album. Start to get much more thematical at this stage. This is a song about the French Revolution. It talks about guillotines getting their bloody prize and stuff like that. Something that's actually relatively on brand today in 2026. This album was not well liked. See, I quite enjoy this song. I think this is probably the best song from the album. But like I say, it was getting very, very heavy thematically. The lyrics kind of go all over the place.
Right.
The record company didn't get it. They recorded the album, they released it. They were touring with Kiss at the time.
Yep.
And they played it for Paul Stanley. They could tell he didn't get it. Alex famously said, I'm not even sure if we really got it. They were high most of the time they wrote that, and I think it sort of does come through a little bit in the lyrics.
I'm not even sure we really get it.
The record company started to lean on them a bit at this stage. They said, no, you're not releasing something like this again. We need to become more commercially friendly. We want radio hits. We want singles.
Yep.
And Ray Daniels, their manager, said, no worries. I'll send that back to the band. I'm sure they're going to do that. And so they went off, they recorded their next album, 2112, became one of the most famous prog rock concept albums of all time. The opening song for that was a 20-minute song that has 5 different names. It's 2112 Overture, the Temple of Syrinx, I can't even remember them all.
Yeah.
Down to Finale. So this was the opening of the next album. After they said, no worries, shorter songs, we're going to do another thing. They told the record company one thing and went off and did the exact opposite. Critics,
and was that in spite of the record company?
Hell yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, they all decided that they would rather go back to their old jobs than compromise on what they wanted to make.
Yep.
And this is what they wanted to make.
And while we're listening to this, I'm surrounded by a music industry now that constantly is in the mindset of playing the game, and the number of times artists say to me, well, they say that you have to do this and you have to do that. And I'm like, who's they? Oh, I went to some workshop or spoke to some industry person, and now there's all these rules. The recent one we had was a single that got rejected not rejected, but it got criticized because the drums didn't come early enough, and there's a whole history of bands collectively just saying fuck off.
And this is one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to talk about modern industry things. I'm breaking my own rule now.
but it's very relevant.
But it winds me up.
It's very relevant.
Where did the rebellious, independent, cowboy vibe of the music world go? Now everyone's begging and everyone's become a softie.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it sort of takes that sort of level of conviction that, no, this is the artwork that we do. This is what we enjoy doing. This is what we're going to do.
Well, you just said it. You just said we're either going to do this or we're going to go home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you need to have that conviction if you actually want to do that.
Yeah.
And they're a band that had that.
Yeah.
And so this album, this is where they, I think, sort of peak in the sort of concept album. 2112 is a terrific concept album. It's actually, it's got a foreword in the sleeve of the album that says this is dedicated to The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
Did you say what year this was?
I don't think I did. Sorry, this is 1976.
Okay, so it's one a year for a while.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, they would go out, tour and do 200 plus shows in a year and write new songs while they were on the road, cut it in 2 to 3 weeks and do it again. And they did that for, I think, 6 or 7 years, where it was like an album a year.
Yeah.
And these are heavy albums. This is not easy music to play.
Right.
It's not easy music to record. Most of the songs that they did, they always wanted to record and do things as if it was a live song. Most of the songs they recorded were one take, live takes.
Yep.
And because they were a live band, that was their bread and butter. That's what they liked doing. And obviously that gets harder and harder when you start doing 20-minute epic songs with 3 or 4 different key changes, all sorts of time signature changes. It's very, very heavy stuff. It'll
be interesting to know how they worked, and there's often a lot of misinformation out there. Probably not the best word I could use, but confusion, let's say, or artists throwing people off the scent in terms of a lot of the time it's been unpopular to say, yeah, we write up charts and we read them and we do the kind of the bookworm stuff, They like to imply that they don't do that stuff.
These guys lean heavy into that.
They'd have to.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was saying. They'd have to. I remember when I interviewed Doug Pinnock from King's X, he talked about their first manager and how the first manager was the one who was like, do it again, play it again, work harder, just to get up to this really, really high level that they eventually got to. And when you hear those early albums, I've played you some King's X and you said it reminded you of Rush, they were so tight and it was so elaborate and they're incredibly impressive. So yeah, in some ways, the amount of work that goes into that sort of stuff is going to not be necessarily as intense as you think it might be, because they're already very high level players. If they've charted it all out, they could probably just sort of write it up and then play through it and wing it. It doesn't mean it's ready yet, but then if they rehearse it, it's going to really start to take shape as they get familiar.
That's what I think these guys did.
So it's one thing I've pointed out to people in the past is that when you're a new musician and you're doing everything by feel and playing by ear, man, you basically go to rehearsal every week and learn all the songs again because you forget what everyone did last week.
Yep.
But when you install these more professional approaches, you don't have to work as hard.
You can't wing Rush songs.
Totally. I believe it based on what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And so this was an album when they released it. Like I said, the critics hated it.
Right.
But the fans love it.
Yeah.
It ended up being their most successful album to date. 0 radio play, 0 promotion, all through classic word of mouth.
Yep.
You'd see people in the high school halls wearing a denim jacket with the 2112. It's a very famous sort of image and symbolism in sort of the prog rock history at this stage.
Right, yeah.
And Neil famously said this was sort of the skeleton key. 2112 gave them creative license. Because the record company hated it so much, but the fans and the sales all of a sudden went through the roof, they said, you know what? You guys are onto something. These people are buying your records. Do what you want to do. So that was sort of, the leash was off at that stage and they could just keep going.
Cool.
And what's interesting, if you actually just go to the end of that song. So yeah, with the 2112 overture song, it's all about, this other planet, and there's your protagonist who finds a guitar, and in this futuristic sci-fi world, individualism is dead, and everyone converts to the norm, and so they try and do their own thing, and he gets shut down, and the priests at the temple, go against him, and it's got all these like really heavy literary meanings. And I think in the back end, it actually does sort of play into what they were dealing with as a band as well. They were trying to maintain that creative control. And towards the end of the song, which we're coming to now, it actually ends with just an overtone, a monotonous overtone voice saying, we've gained control, we've gained control. And I thought that's such a badass sort of screw you way to end the first song. In a way that the record company said, you're absolutely not to do this, no more long epics, no more weird stuff, and they just, we're going to get weirder and longer, and we're just going to issue it, and if you don't like it, too bad. And I think that's something that a lot of bands could learn from.
It's also interesting, though, because record companies famously through history have often put albums in purgatory. And, they're under contract, but they won't release the album because they're not happy with it. So the record company didn't have to release it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they obviously listened to it in the end and changed their mind, or gave in or something.
Yeah, maybe they did just gave in. Maybe they thought, we'll release it and see how it does.
Yeah, artists would sometimes get stuck because they'd be like on a 5-album deal, but the company has lost faith in them, or they don't like the 4th album that they've recorded or whatever, and they'd basically stop all progress. And the artist wouldn't be able to move on with their career because they're still stuck in the deal, but the record company wouldn't progress the deal forward. And sometimes that's why you'll have artists who will change their name and things like that. So
we have assumed control.
This is starting to explain a little bit about you too.
Yeah, I don't deal well with authority figures. And I mean, a lot of that stuff did really speak to me. When you're hearing this music as what you consider a bit of a rebellious teen, everyone goes through those sorts of years, and so it really connected with me at the time.
When are you going to finish that phase?
When I die. So they finished 2112. Like I say, it goes through the roof with the fans at least. Reinvents them because after Caress of Steel, they thought this was it. They were going to be done. But Caress of Steel sort of paved the way for their next concept album, which was 2112. And then they thought, what, they actually wanted to sort of to pull back from that a little bit. The next song is Closer to the Heart. This was on the next album that was released in 1977, on the A Farewell to Kings album. You may have heard this one before. This is one of their bigger hits. This is another one that gets the whole stadium up and going, and is a big hit that you'll hear on truck ads or all sorts of stuff. You hear all sorts of stuff.
I don't know if we have truck ads in New Zealand.
Oh, maybe that's a Canadian thing. That's a North American thing. But they were, as far as critics were concerned, Rush was branded, terminally unhip. They're weird guys. They're this weird 3-piece from Canada. I actually really like that album. The men who hold high places must be the first to start. To mold a new reality closer to the heart. That's the sort of stuff that, like you say, it's some lyrics will connect with you and some won't. It's a very individual thing, but one of the things that's so special about Rush is Neil never sort of compromised on what his vision was for any song. Any sort of theme he wanted to dive into, just dove into it, and did it with quite a bit of nuance and finesse in the lyrics, which I think is something that should be I think applauded more than it really is.
Now, I've been sitting here waiting for you to finish so I can inject my very clever joke that I just thought of. Would you say that another name that these guys could have used would be Tragically Unhip?
Ooh, we're definitely doing a Tragically Hip one as well.
Good Canadian joke, right? Aren't you impressed?
It was, yeah. We're doing a Tragically Hip episode as well. Listen to that guitar playing by Alex Lifeson. You know, whether you've never picked up a guitar or you've been playing for years and feel like you've hit a wall, Auckland Guitar Lessons are for you. Lessons are one-on-one, and every session is built around your goals, your taste, and the songs you actually want to play. All the fundamentals of technique and theory are covered in an accessible way and applied within the songs you're learning, so you progress faster and actually enjoy the ride. If you've always wanted to play, now's the time. If you've plateaued, Auckland Guitar Lessons will unlock your playing, rebuild your confidence, and get you moving again. Head to aucklandguitarlessons.co.nz or email info@aucklandguitarlessons.co.nz to find out more.
I love it how we're like, hey, why don't we just like slip this in and make it feel really natural, and you go from like chatting about Rush into total like radio voice. Lean into the mic, blah, 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 blah.
Isn't that how you do ads?
That's how you did ads.
Oh.
I had a guy write to me yesterday who jokingly said, you're rubbish at saying ads based on our last episode. You should totally get someone else to do it. You're hopeless, because I was stumbling all over it, right? And I wrote back and said, yeah, but I got you thinking about it.
There you go. Yeah, there it works. Yeah,
it's all on purpose. I'm actually brilliant at talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. It's all on purpose.
So Closer to the Heart was quite a bit more commercially successful. The band sort of took another step up at this stage. Their sound palette gets bigger and bigger. Neil's drum kit famously expands more and more and more throughout their career.
Is Geddy already doing the foot pedal triggers and the keys and bass? That's all happened from the start? Or right, okay.
Yeah. They're, like I said, they're always, famously, they're always outpacing themselves a little bit. They're always writing just a little bit outside of their sort of comfort zone.
Yeah.
And part of that was also using the technology of the day.
Right.
So there's been a number of shows and songs that they try and do where they do it in the recording studio, and then, you know, they always do it with the thought process of how do we do it live. But obviously their rigs, everything expands. They get a bit more digital over the years. But at this stage, we're still in the late 70s. The next album that comes out is Hemispheres, which was released in 1978.
Okay.
And this is probably their heaviest song in terms of, I think, the difficulty in the music.
Right.
This song is actually probably my personal favorite song. This is called Trees.
I was going to actually ask before, is this your favorite band? Or
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's definitely top 10.
Yeah. And how many friendships have you walked away from?
0.
From people who don't. Especially
most
Canadians,
don't
right?
like what I like.
But especially Canadians who don't like Rush must feel like sacrilege.
I don't think so. I think it's more like most of my friends didn't like it.
Yeah.
I don't think the song's actually about trees, by the way.
I have noticed that a lot of bands have a writing style which is writing like stories and themes, and one of the running jokes, of course, is every band has written a song about like some sort of medieval situation or whatever. My own personal preference is I've never felt anything from that. It's not saying this is a true opinion or anything, it's just my own opinion or my own thing, as I always react to lyrics that feel like they're more, you know, personal, or you know what I mean, like they're more of an expression of where someone is, rather than someone talking about knights and horses and fairies. That's also, I mean, also to double down on that, I've never liked fantasy movies, no interest in Game of Thrones, no interest in Lord of the Rings.
See, we definitely differ on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just my preference.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of am pretty much the polar opposite of that, where I am fascinated by people who are able to write a song about trees, but actually make it about inequality and power struggle.
Right, I see.
And that's what this one is.
Yeah.
And I think if you can sort of blend the...
I'm not against that idea. If you're using like metaphor...
That's what this one is.
Yeah. If you're using metaphor to say something else, then that's interesting, I agree. I think a lot of bands... I don't know, I think they had the story part, but without the point. You know, like, okay, I'll just say another thing that'll have to become another episode too. Like, I'm totally a Phil Collins era of Genesis guy. I love Peter Gabriel as a solo artist, but the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis...
I actually agree with you on that
this
one.
is garbage.
Well, okay, maybe I don't agree with you. I don't know if I'd go as far as garbage, but I did prefer Phil Collins.
Garbage in the sense of, like, song structures were way too indulgent. The lyrics were about nothing. It was all costumes. It was just like, what are you guys doing? Yeah. I understand that historically music had to try this stuff. Now we're talking about Genesis, but but am much more interested in listening to No Son of Mine. That gives me goosebumps every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're a similar band. I mean, they were at that sort of prog rock genesis, really.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I also think that, and this is still a comment on Genesis, but it probably applies to a lot of this stuff. I think people out there have a bit of a messed up attitude in terms of they will, by default, always go for the weird stuff and be suspicious of commercial music. And I think a lot of people love to hate Phil Collins because it was commercial, much more commercial. Yeah. But it's actually much harder to write. So if a band like Rush or Genesis or whoever else can be creative and all that stuff and still end up with catchy choruses and tight arrangements. Catchy choruses and tight arrangements is really, really hard to write.
Yep.
And I challenge anybody with the opposite opinion. Try writing one yourself.
And I actually think that's what's so impressive about these guys is a lot of their songs kind of will go like sort of one foot in both camps.
Yeah. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what Mike did there was a very professional move because he sensed that I was waffling on a tangent and I was struggling to get myself back. And he just pulled me back to Rush. That was a class move.
Thank you. Getting better at this.
I did like that middle bit while I was waffling, that middle bit with all the percussion stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He, this is where his kit really, really expands. And the next song we're going to play is probably one of the songs that's known as their sort of hardest songs to play on the drums.
Looks like there's an enormous fade in on it.
It does. This is La Via Strangiata. One of the things that's so great about this song, though, is the dynamic that actually builds. Alex Lifeson has one of my all-time favorite guitar solos in this song. You'll see how much the time signatures change over the life of the song. But this is a song that has absolutely incredible dynamics, and the way that Alex Lifeson builds up his solo is something pretty special, I think.
Where should I jump to?
Maybe about a third of the way through.
Bit of a Gilmore moment here.
Yeah, their musicianship takes another step up in this album. They also talk about how this album in particular was sort of a bit of a turning point for them as well, where they said, you know what, this is too much. They tried to record this song in one take and had to split it into 3 different takes.
Right.
They still play it live, and I've seen them play it live, and it's amazing. But yeah, it was a hard one to record.
The hi-hat work is great here.
His drumming is amazing. Pretty distinct differences in the parts too, but they seem to do it like the transitions are smooth, which is impressive.
Yeah. This is
more jazzy.
I was just about to say it's more jazz fusion. Can I talk about Phil Collins again? One more thing on Phil Collins. He played drums for a band called Brand X on 1 or 2 albums. Unbelievable. It's like this kind of stuff, a lot faster, a lot more complicated. But yeah, very much of this time. What year is this?
This is 1978.
Yeah, I think that's almost exactly when Phil did Brand X. It's interesting how this style of playing has kind of gone out of fashion.
It has.
To some degree.
Yeah.
It sort of came back with modern kind of jazz fusion groups like Snarky Puppy. They do a similar thing, kind of a modernized version of it. Those guys are great. But it's interesting how this stuff kind of, I don't know. I don't even know what happened to it, but a lot of people got a bit eye-rolly about it, didn't they?
Well, I think we've talked about this, how music progresses and sort of at a macro level where you have the zeitgeist that tends to shift around a little bit. You know, you kind of go a bit too far. And I feel like the late 70s and into the 80s, it did get a bit gratuitous with the solos, with the overly thematic songs, the really long-run sort of songs where they're these big epics. And this band actually agreed after this album. So this was in 1978. They agreed, we're done.
Right.
This is the end of the long epics. It became too much too much for the listener, too much for them playing, too much to be constantly coming up and trying to outdo yourself.
Yeah,
when you're
right,
doing stuff like this. Like, where do you go next? You know?
See, I don't mind. Like, this is fine with me because I listen to loads of instrumental music. I listen to heaps of jazz and stuff like that. So I'm quite happy like listening to this. The late '80s it wasn't just about guitar solos. It was posturing and it was hot air and it was all posy and spandex. It was
all the image.
It wasn't art.
Yeah.
Really, I think the audiences could sense this is an art.
Yeah.
And then when Nirvana came out, it's like, okay, back to visceral emotion, you know. But to me, this still sounds like musicians playing, not posing.
Oh no, and that's what's so cool about these guys is they were never comfortable with the image side of things.
Yeah.
Like they famously really sucked at it. That's what I said. It was so easy to clown on them. They had this whole like kimono era where they didn't really know what they were doing and had this long hair and these silk robes they'd go out and perform in, and a bunch of the other bands on the circuits were making fun of them relentlessly, and they said, we were always the type of band that just wanted to be in jeans and a t-shirt.
Right.
That's all they wanted to do. They just all they cared about was the music. It was all about the music. They were also at this stage they were family men. They all had wives at this stage. They had kids. They were never partiers. There's a funny interview with Gene Simmons where he was just like, what the hell's wrong with these guys? Like, do you not see what you can do? And they'd be in their room watching TV and getting ready for the show the next day, practicing on or writing songs for the next album. They were just workaholics essentially.
Yeah.
So they ran away from that sort of music in the next album, and the next one was from Permanent Waves, which was released in 1980. This is The Spirit of Radio. Mm-hmm. So they decided we're gonna get a bit more lean into some of the more commercial songs, lean into a bit more radio friendly songs, but you'll notice they still did it in a very Rush way. So at this stage, they've been playing, 200 plus show tours for 5 years straight. They're starting to burn out. Like I said, their priorities are shifting. Mm-hmm. They're writing songs that are more relevant to them now. Less of the big crazy sci-fi epics. More songs just focusing on groove, on technique. I think this is where a lot of people really start to think Rush becomes Rush.
Right. Interesting. It's interesting that's much more of a pop chord progression.
Yep.
I can't decide what it makes me think of. I was going to say Aerosmith and I was going to say Van Halen.
They were very influenced around this sort of period with the Talking Heads and Police.
Well, neither of those bands are showing up here.
Oh, just wait.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm listening.
And that was, like I said, they were a band that was constantly looking for inspiration all over the world and incorporating it into their own music.
4 on the floor, that's a bit of a Police move.
They often say that Permanent Waves was the most important stepping stone in the band. Mm-hmm. Just like Caress of Steel kind of paved the way for 2112. Permanent Waves paved the way for Moving Pictures.
Okay.
Which Moving Pictures is their biggest album by far. It came out in 1981, so like I say, we're still in that cadence of an album a year. And these are heavy albums and a heavy touring schedule.
Regardless of anything we're talking about, it's so great to hear music recorded this long ago where it hasn't been quantized.
Yep.
And you can hear the pushes and pulls, and you can hear them listening to each other, and I love all that stuff. Even if I don't like a song, I still like hearing the communication between the musicians.
They really seem to have a knack for changing time signatures and changing tempo without losing you.
Yeah.
Without losing the audience, and even people who are not musicians. They really are a musician band. Like, those are the people that really seem to latch onto it, I think, because of some of the complexity. Mm-hmm, but even people who are just casual fans won't lose their place in these sort of songs, you know?
Yeah.
You know what this song needs, though? A skanky reggae breakdown.
Right.
Now you'll hear the Police influences.
Ah, there you go. Wow, that's like a Police tribute moment.
I know. And Neil basically said as much.
Yeah, cool. It's quite funny that we haven't put the Police on the list as a band to talk about. Maybe it's nothing to talk about because everyone knows them because they're so unbelievably massive. I don't know what I would say.
Truthfully, I never really listened to the Police that much before I started taking lessons with you, and then we did a few songs. So I think it could definitely be an interesting
Could
episode.
be good, yeah, because it could be one of those things where we talk a lot about B-sides and things, and the lesser known stuff often surprises people. So.
That's all I knew was their major hits.
Yeah.
That was kind of all I knew of them.
I like that riff, by the way.
Alex Lifeson, I think, is an incredibly underrated guitarist. Like, we got to remember, this is just 3 guys. So all of that melody and rhythm, he's playing all of it. You know, he did a lot of open string stuff where he kind of uses the open string as sort of the bass notes, and then he builds the melody underneath.
Obviously, studio recordings, it's not just 3 recordings. Like, I can hear overdubs coming and going. And,
yeah.
Things like that.
That's what I mean. When they play the stuff live, though, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, the next song, this is probably Rush's biggest hit.
Are you going to fit the next 5 songs in 3 minutes?
Yep. Well, not 3 minutes. We'll probably go a little bit over on this one.
Cool.
I'm sure you've heard this one before. This is Tom Sawyer, released in 1981.
Yeah.
This album in particular is the album where they really gelled together.
I'm just lost in thought at the moment, trying to work out, like, I have to hear it in the context of the time it came out. And
this is pretty early. This is like the start of that sort of synthwave movement.
This is always the challenge when you're listening to music from the past, is you have to try and turn off in your brain everything that happened since then. I can see how innovative this is. I can see how this would have really lit people up in that moment. I can totally see that. I'm also trying to decide whether his voice is growing on me or not. Couldn't quite get up to those notes. I think I heard his eyes going bloodshot just then.
You can start to hear a bit more synthesizer work, some more on the keys. So yeah, that's probably their biggest hit.
Right.
That's the one that when you go to a concert, it's been parodied in South Park.
Yeah.
And they like to start their concerts by playing the South Park clip, and then they start going into the song, and then they come in live underneath it. Mm-hmm. It is so epic. Like, it's one of those things that when you're at the venue and that comes on, and that sort of that low droney sort of bass note comes in at the start, the whole crowd just loses their mind.
Yeah.
So that is one of the most epic stadium songs I think I've ever heard live.
There's always something so moving at a live show where a band comes in on a particular song, and it's a song that's always meant a lot to you personally, and you feel the entire crowd react the same way, and you realize that it's not that you ever thought you were the only one that had the experience with the song, but there's something about when you realize that it's not just me.
Yeah.
You know, like, this song has moved me for 25 years or whatever, and apparently it's moved everyone else too. There's something about that communal experience.
It becomes a very emotional experience.
Very emotional, yeah.
I think that's one of the things most people, once they experience it once, that's what you love about live music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that community. It's everybody having a shared passion. There's a certain energy level that you can't really feel anywhere else.
That's the backdrop of your life thing.
Yep.
You know, it's like when I saw Paul McCartney live a few years back, and every song that came on and the whole crowd, and you kind of go, wow, this is, and obviously a lot of the Beatles stuff was before I was born, but, you know, it's just this, we've all existed with this. Mm-hmm. You know, this is our backing music to our movie. It's amazing. Yep. So if we're trying to convince non-Rush fans to be fans of Rush, maybe we shouldn't go on too long.
Yep, fair enough. Maybe we'll skip a couple. The next one I was going to play was YYZ, which is an instrumental track. Okay. One of the things I love about that one is that the guitar ends up sort of setting a bit of the foundation, and the drums and bass trade solos for about a couple minutes, which is, I think, pretty cool.
I'll just play a tiny bit. Yeah, that was cool.
That intro was actually inspired off of a radar Doppler when they were coming into land at Toronto Pearson Airport, which the designation is YYZ. Yep. They heard the radar going, cool. And Neil Peart thought, hey, there's a song.
There's a song.
And it is a wicked song. Go check that one out.
Yeah.
Maybe skip forward to R12.
Do you want to explain why You're referring to it as R12?
Well, so part of Danny and I, when we come up with these episode ideas, we kind of like the idea of experiencing things live in the moment.
Yeah.
So when I came up with the episode idea, I'm trying to tell the story of Rush. It's a 40-plus year career, so it's obviously a very detailed, in-depth story. I just named all of the MP3s Rush 1, Rush 2, Rush 3, so that way you'd come into them a bit blind. So yeah, that's why I'm saying R12.
And also on the Dynamics episode, I did a similar thing so that you didn't have a chance to get a heads up of what I was playing you.
Yeah, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun hearing those live in the context of what you want to get across, right?
Exactly.
So after Moving Pictures, they actually changed. They had one more album called Signals, which was released in 1982. That was the last album that was produced by Terry Brown. So Terry Brown had released 12 albums with them at this stage. And they were getting more into sort of pop music, getting more into new wave, getting more into sort of that 80s sound. They started writing a lot more with keys-focused songs. I kind of jokingly referred to the period of 1984 to 1996 as sort of like the lost decade. This is where a lot of Rush fans fell off,
right?
Because they got so much more into the pop and keys really became much more focused.
This is the sound of the time, though.
Yep.
I mean, I
100%.
can hear the guitars are EQ'd like Def Leppard and all that kind of stuff, which you can't hold against them for that.
This is actually probably my favorite favorite song from this sort of era.
Yeah, we're definitely in the 80s.
Yeah, 100%. You can hear it. You can hear it very, very strongly.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of their albums from sort of 1984 to the mid 90s were kind of in that realm.
Yeah.
The band did kind of change a little bit at this time. Alex didn't love that, it was so much more keys focused. He wasn't the guitars sort of were taking a bit of a back seat, but they still had a bit of commercial success.
They're pretty upfront, the guitars.
Maybe this was a bad example.
Yeah, maybe.
There is a lot of songs where I think there's one called Distant Early Warning or Red Alert, where Neil is playing a very digital drum kit. He's playing an E-kit.
Right.
It's a lot of like samples, really synth heavy, very keys focused, and it didn't really work with a lot of fans.
There's a type of EQing that they would do at this period on the guitars. They'd give it this kind of glassy sound. They'd really make it really high and trebly and cut most of the lows right out. And I feel like it took so many years for that to finally get out of everyone's system. It did my head in. From the 90s into the 2000s, you'd go and record an acoustic in the studio and they made the acoustic sound like this thin, glassy thing. I was like, no! Less 80s, more Neil Young,
Yeah.
So I flinch a bit when I hear that guitar tone, but I can totally hear that they are a band of their time making a record in their time.
Exactly.
So
that's what it was. Yeah. And around this time, unfortunately, a tragedy struck the band. On August 10th, 1997, they got a call. Neil's daughter, she was 19 at the time, passed away in a car accident. They really struggled. The next year was pretty much hell on Neil and his wife of 23 years at the time, and she passed in June or July, I think. June 20 of 1998, so less than a year later.
His wife
passed.
Right.
Lost his daughter and his wife within 12 months. She died of cancer. He kind of says, it was a slow suicide, essentially. She basically gave up.
Wow.
So the band was done at this stage. They had no desire. Neil actually kind of went on a bit of a soul journey. He just got on his motorcycle and left. He was a big rider. I kind of mentioned earlier how much he struggled with fame. That's a pretty common theme that runs in a lot of the different songs. Did an 88,000 kilometer bike ride all along like northern Canada, all through Alaska, down the west coast, all the way down south to Belize and back. Alex and Geddy were at home just like, hey, did you hear from him today? Because like they didn't know. I mean, a trip like that, even something could go wrong, not by design, let alone with the mental state he's in, right?
Yeah.
So it was a real tough couple years for all of them.
Yeah.
Slowly, he sort of found himself again. Somebody who gets to the level of technique and prowess that Neil was at. You know, if you're at a stage where you're one of the best in the world at something, it's hard not to have that drive to want to get back. And a couple years on, after some of his healing journey, he got back with the band. You know, they sort of talked about, oh, maybe we'll kind of try to start to maybe come into the studio and have a jam or something. It was very much like a wounded bird you needed to just coax to get back into that world. Obviously, getting back into the Rush world brings all sorts of public criticism and press junkets and all that sort of stuff. So coming back into that after such a tragic couple of years was no mean feat.
Absolutely.
But he did. He got behind the kid again and decided, you know what, they wanted to cut a couple more albums. And they released 3 more albums. Vapor Trail, Snakes and Arrows, and Clockwork Angels. It was actually on the Snakes and Arrows and Clockwork Angels. Those were the first tours I was able to ever go see them live.
Right, yeah.
So I'm forever grateful that they did get back together because they were just right back to the top of their game.
Right.
They kind of moved away from the sort of 80s sound, got back into more of like the classic Rush sound, but with a more modern take. So if you play the next one, this is a song called Far Cry from Snakes and Arrows, released in 2007.
And did you notice a big sort of jump in emotion or anger or anything like that on this record after such a tragic loss?
Vapor Trails, which was the album before this one. Right, it actually starts with a song called One Little Victory.
Yeah.
And it was obviously a fucking massive victory to be recording and writing music and living, with your friends again.
Yeah.
But it is a bit heavier. This is now in 2007, so you're in like that mid to early noughts. But yeah, so they did another tour, the Clockwork Angels tour, in sort of the 2012 to 2014 range. And then Neil stepped away in 2015. Unfortunately, he was developing tendonitis and all sorts of shoulder issues. And then he ended up falling sick with cancer. Didn't tell anyone. It was one of those things that all of a sudden he passed away. We learned after the fact that he'd been dealing with it for, I think, 3 or 4 years at that time. But Neil passed from... I don't know how to say that, glioblastoma, essentially brain cancer, in January of 2020. And, that was the end of the Rush story.
Yeah.
Until February of this year, when all of a sudden we heard that Rush was going back on tour. The announcement that Rush was getting back together was a huge shock. That was something that, like, most fans never really thought we'd see. And the drummer that they've brought on, her name is Annika Niles or Niles? Do you know how to say it?
I don't know her name, no.
Okay.
I just know she's German.
Yeah, so I'd never heard of her until all of a sudden they popped up on the Juno Awards, and then all of a sudden I had to look like, who is this person? Who can follow up after Neil? And we've got a sample of one of her songs that she wrote called Alter Ego. So this is the new drummer for Rush on the Rush 50-something tour.
This is her own song.
Yeah.
What's the fan response been like to her?
Well, from what I've seen, glowingly positive.
Awesome. But such a loved, treasured band that's so deep in the Canadian culture and has that cult status, and fans love them or hate them or whatever, it can often be very divisive when there's a member change, right?
I'm sure there is a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people will say, oh, it's not Rush without Neil. But from what I've seen anyways, and the people that I talk with about it, we're quite an accepting bunch where if you're willing to sit there and listen to a 20-minute song and read liner notes, you're thinking about this stuff pretty deeply.
I watched some footage of her playing with Rush a few weeks ago because our friend Rooney did a react video to a Rush thing, and it was really interesting to watch. Like, it looked like she was having the time of her life.
So I mean, for someone like me, I immediately just think, well, if she's good enough for Alex and Geddy, she's good. Like, if you can play these songs and a lot of people can play the songs, but if you can play the songs live with these two guys and give it that feel, I'm on board.
The other side of that I guess non-musicians may not fully know is that you can have some really high-level musicians together who are all just absolutely extraordinary, and they just don't jive.
Yeah.
Because there's just such a thing as musical chemistry.
Yep.
And it's like the same thing with like romantic connections, I guess.
Totally.
You both might be great people, and you just don't feel it.
Yep.
No, she's great. When I was watching that live footage of her, I was really impressed with her.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a 50-something year career, and what did we get to? An hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half?
I said so many times, we've got to keep this one short. Less is more, Mike. Less is more. If the listeners could see the number of pages of notes he's walked in here with. I mean, it's just, I don't know. If you want to convert people, I just, I question your methods. But that's fine. It was all very interesting and engaging.
I think they're the type of band that you have to be a bit of a weirdo who's willing to sit through a whole bunch of long conversations.
Well, let's find out what everyone else thinks. Would like to get your comments and feedback. I will talk in a minute about what I'm thinking in this moment. But of course, we're on all of the usual platforms, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of that. We also have just set up a Facebook group, a private group recently, where you can actually find this group if you go to our Facebook page, What Do You Know Show. You can go to whatdoyouknow.co.nz, our website. You're welcome to comment anywhere and everywhere, and let us know what you think, and like and subscribe and all that crap. So our conclusion or verdict, this is probably more on me, isn't it?
I think so. I think when, maybe when we introduce each other to music, you'd kind of mention maybe it'd be a good idea to sort of play back and give a sort of Cole's notes on why you think the other person enjoys that music.
Yeah.
So.
I was going to add one thing before we do that, which is something that I think we've lost in the culture of music is something that was lost thanks to streaming and algorithms and playlists and things like that. Music historically, you would almost always hear about a new band because someone would say, "Dude, you've got to check this out."
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth, but it'd be ramped up with passion and also specific nuance. Like, don't start at that 1972 album. You've got to start at 1975 or whatever. There's context around it, and that's something I just don't think playlists give you. I don't think.
I agree.
Randomly, like you like this, so you might like that. Oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
We've got to engage with each other about what we like, because it's just not working on the streaming.
And talk
platforms.
about why.
Talk about why.
Yeah.
Sell it to each other.
Yeah. Exactly.
And one thing that I know that I can't get up to speed with is your life with Rush. So there's all of this emotion, and I'm sure there's memories associated with all these songs for you and stuff like that.
Totally.
But yeah, like being introduced to them now, I'm impressed. I think I like them a little bit. I don't know if I'd put them on. It's still Getty. That's probably the barrier.
Yeah.
And that's mainly because I obviously already have a particular interest in the stuff that I like, which is less kind of like art house, and I like more of the punk rock, visceral, explosive emotion stuff rather than I am a knight and there's horse over there,
I don't think you quite listen to the lyrics, but that's all right.
But I don't just mean the lyrics, I mean the kind of theatrical stuff. I never got into the prog rock scene at all. Like,
and
I loved moments in Floyd, but I don't put Floyd on because I can't listen to a whole show,
Yeah, I definitely do lean into that.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the thematical albums, like The Wall. I love that.
Yeah.
I've listened to that so many friggin' times.
Yeah. I just realized I totally screwed it up. We weren't doing the Steel Manning thing. I was just saying what I thought.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think that still works too. And you're right. Like, if I were to introduce someone to Rush, I wouldn't have done it the way we just did it here. This was giving the history of the band, how they got to where they did.
Yeah.
I would start on Permanent Waves or Moving Pictures, which is sort of towards the end of their thematical stuff. Like,
Should we do that going forward? When we're doing this, wouldn't it make more sense if it was more like, if we were just hanging out and I was like, you haven't heard this band? Come on, check, and I was trying to get you into it. Wouldn't that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Rather than a kind of a historical, chronological thing.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking of this one as telling the story of the band.
Yeah, which is great. All very interesting.
Yeah, we can change it up.
Yeah.
Hey, join the group and tell us what you think.
Exactly.
Do you like the history, or do you want us to just talk as if we're trying to get each other onto the music that we like?
Yeah. Also, we set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. So if you'd like to support us, Buy Me a Coffee /What Do We Know Show is where you'll find us. Anything and everything would be very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you got a Rush lick for me?
No, I don't actually. This episode was brought to you by Auckland Guitar Lessons. Head to aucklandguitarlessons.co.nz or email info@aucklandguitarlessons.co.nz to find out more.